What's going? Okay, now, so Jack's Max has been talking about the Inquisitions.
Well, I think he epitomizes a inquisitor, of someone who would probably take your ass out if he disagreed with you on a stake. So who
is Jack Smack? This may come as a surprise.
He's an ultra fundy Baptist on YouTube. It's not too intelligent, but okay, kind of like the people you've met that have mouths bigger than their brains, right? That's basically who Jack Smack is.
So do you think that's kind of like what it was, or do you think it was different than that?
Much different than that. Like again, a lot of the nuance about history gets lost in translation and pop culture, especially like when you have earlier parties that are invested in propaganda. But essentially, like the evils of the Inquisition, the idea that you just be kind of captured, kind of tortured for a confession, and then sort of executed at the stake. A lot of that is vastly embellished to the point where it's essentially a lie. Whereas the Spanish Inquisition today, as the public knows it, is thoroughly in the realm of myth. It has been mythologized so much that a lot of people aren't aware of the kind of aren't aware of the real nature of the Spanish Inquisition. Like, for instance, from the records that have survived and that we have access to, we actually have like records of defendants being tried in the inquisitionary courts, right? And they are there because they intentionally committed blasphemy. Like they would usually say like GC or GD, right? There's a reason for that, because oftentimes they were kind of indicted on more serious crimes, usually kind of like theft, break and entering, sometimes brawling, right? And they would add heresy onto their charges so that their cases could be tried in inquisitional courts, because secular courts were actually had far less legal restraint. Like, for instance, in Inquisition courts, although there was torture in some cases, right? That torture could not exceed more than 30 minutes. And not only that, but that confession that would be received in torture was not admissible in court until you could get a second confession that was garnered when the defendant was not being tortured, right? So,
wow.
Exactly. So, like, they were very much aware that people will confess to any amount of crime under torture, which is why that one confession was not admissible without a second one that was given obviously freely and of their own volition. Obviously, it's not the kind of equality and the equity we would have today, but it's not the same as what is often depicted in popular culture. And
isn't that still harsh though? Like, could they ever, like, let's say they were getting ready to be put to the stake. What if they says, "Oh, forgive me" or something? Would there be forgiveness, and then they're not on the stake anymore?
As I said, inquisitional courts were like, in some cases, like absurdly liberal, because in the perspective of the inquisitor, they're not after this man. They're not after this man's guilt, right? They're after to save his soul. And as they had said that. Whenever they have to put someone to death, they consider that a defeat, because yes, they've killed this man. They might have removed that heresy from their society, but they have lost his soul, and that's exactly what they're trying to. That's what they're trying to earn. That's what they're trying to win. And so, as I said, to our modern society, yes, this seems unfair, but considering legal law at the time, this was amazingly humanitarian. And so,
this is horseshit, bro. This is high grade.
Well,
high
you can say that, but then defend
unfiltered, absolute revisionist history horse shit.
Well, listen, now you wanted to debate this, and I have no problem doing that later, right? And so where this is coming from is actually from the Inquisitor's own notes, from the documentation that has all.
Yeah, You know what also came from notes of political leaders at the time was a whole bunch of beseeching to the Spanish government, the two leaders at the time. That brother sister couple, Ferdinand or whatever it was, saying, "Can you please stop this incredible, horrendous, like absolute?"
Oh yeah, that definitely happened. I'm not going to say. Yeah, I know. I agree with you on that. Yeah.
And they're like, "No, it's good for our political power. We're going to keep torturing people because the crown and the church are one, and therefore." Allegiance to one is allegiance to the other, which helps us keep our power secured by bringing everyone under the church and then using them to do our dirty work and basically torturing people for submission to both a political and religious system that had been basically hybridized and paganized from what it originally was. I'm not. I mean, what do you not? No, seriously, you cannot say that going out and converting people via force and torture is Christian. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. Even the church themselves had said that forced conversions are. Are not okay. And again, this was understood from the earliest days of the church. Of course, we don't always succeed in living up to the standards of Christ. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that we've always lived up to our moral standards.
That's not failing to meet the standard. That's going in the opposite direction.
I don't deny, of course. Yeah. My point is, though, and again, I don't deny that the Spanish Inquisition was kind of bad starting off. No doubt. And I don't think any intellectually honest person could make the assessment that it came out as a good thing. But as time went on, what you saw was kind of the secular powers themselves started kind of losing more authority, and it became more kind of it became more of a. It became more. How would I say this? It became much more in the court of the church rather than the state, and you can even see this by the time that. That the Spanish Inquisition ended in the 19th century. By the time it was kind of signed out of law, right? What you had is the church was trying cases where it was essentially blasphemy laws. Oftentimes, you'd have people that kind of were that kind of how to put it. Broke the Sunday fast or committed blasphemy. By the time the 19th century rolled around, you saw the courts were more humanitarian for their time than the secular ones. And again, as secular power started to leave, this was something else they would do. oftentimes they would draw up a list of people that you knew. Systems today, no doubt, but for the time. And when they happened, they were incredibly humanitarian. Like for instance, I completely claim guilt, get a lighter punishment.
There was nothing, there was nothing humanitarian that was done to those people. I'm sorry.
Well, let me explain. Well, believe it or not, Smokey, here's the thing: the church isn't the first person to prosecute people over heresy. Because again, prosecuting people for heresy was not what the church wanted. It was actually secular governments that began that. And it started in Germany, or at least in like France and Germany. And when they did, there was no legal recourse. When you were accused, the government killed you, usually, right? And the reason being is because kings wanted their kingdoms to be largely homogenous to preserve their power. And so when the Inquisition courts were set up by the church, this was actually a much more humanitarian alternative, and it still preserved state power, it still preserved a largely homogenous society that wasn't upset, right? That was the reason. That, as bad as you think the Inquisition, the Spanish Inquisition was, that was under church. Claim guilt, get a lighter punishment.
There was nothing, there was.
Courts were set up by the church. This was actually a much more humanitarian alternative, and it still preserved. People probably heard of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Oh no, St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre. And so what happened there is the systematic massacres of Huguenot Protestants, of Huguenot Protestants, and there. there's a reason for this, because Huguenot Protestants, it's very interesting, because Huguenot Protestants were not actually targeted by the state. This was a completely organic series of violent. Yeah. Now, as far as like what's the term? I was going to say something, but my brain isn't working right now. I forgot. Okay.
Prize.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Hey, is it